Welcome everybody to Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Overline, cross-line connection lines, and high-center inside travel, and that communicates lines and convergent system lines at 0, 0, point lines and one line, sentence triangulation lines of flux. It's interesting how I said that in position locations, but nothing changed because you'd identify the change itself, because everything has changed now. I said the determination system is all through the mind of interpretation to its front lines. It's all communicates to its convergent system, it's all through the body frame. That puts all communication lines of balance, and how to see this through the dream interpretations have become visionary cortex lines of theta. So that's all communication lines of grounds, high lines of sequence, high lines of panels, processing that position locations, all measured in scales, balance communication lines of flux over line. Triangulation line condition, binary core centers, travel line, coordinate line, communication lines, configuration systems, multi lines of anagrams, calculated and modified, directing line core centers, or binary core centers, argument location setting, encryption location setting, encoding. Address all communication setting, convergent system, multi travel. Okay, so now you have to really understand how to get on high course lines and settings through dreams of interpretation. Your directions. Okay. I want you to understand how to break the code line signals. So you must modify these things in locations so they get a true understanding of what's going on with them and their dreams of interpretation. And then travel. Crossing and that lines puts all communications into comfort zones. And that travel communications. Directions, intelligence, readjusting, existing communications of its travels. That's direct. Okay? Now understand course centers like that's a D formation system and travel. Just the D, direct. Look at that. Just direct itself. Just the D itself has an RECT. Process that course center DI line centers, D line course centers, high position lines of travel. Sets correlations of intelligence, readjusts the settings of existing through its communication center, confirmation system, confirmation line centers of its travels at communication system, all the calculations. But it's all communication lines of balance, right? And that's just through D. Okay? Now, coming into the R. Okay? Now this is just through all lines of correlations, how we see lines of directing signals. So the relation system is the two panels of operation, readjusting to remembering, recycles, reset, course centers, calculations. Now it's all direct line signals, how we modify the line positional levels, how computer online centers, offline sublocations, setting all the calculated modify, directing out binaries, the cortex locations, encryptions, and directing lines of ground communication lines of decoding, D factors over setting. All right, so it gets more complicated as we come in the convergent system all through travel. Okay, and that's just through R. So R is the readjusting. Okay, the realigning, the remembering, and recycling. Okay, R. Break that in code, break that in frequency, break that in pi. So that's lines of communication. How many times you can say R at different frames, different communication, different stories, different altitude, different lines, different travel, different communication lines of self-telling, the operation of readjusting your systems of you, story, frame. The foundations, the readjusting, the atmospheric lines, the memory lines into its existing frame. So we all have to understand how to modify these things. That's how you balance out your dream interpretations as you go through communications coming in line position. Okay, so it's travels in E. E is existing. Okay, eternal line positions, all line center line conditions, being set to our line conditions. That's through E, existing through its energy line, right? Calculation lines at A. A is the awakening. A is the awareness. And set positions to its system, all through attractions, right? So, and then you have M. M is the mind alteration, mind manipulation. Sets course centers, calculations, long lines, multiple levels, line division locations, any alternate travels, galaxy alignments, heights traveled down in the communication system, all through set position. The mind itself sets course centers, calculation lines, all through dream. Okay? Break down the codings, guys. That's all you got to do. That's how you get in position in your dream interpretation settings so you don't get confused with what you're seeing through vision now. So that's DREAM. And it's all direct, readjusting your existing of your awareness, of your awakenings, of your minds. Dream. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Now, codify your system. It has computer operates line settings, box frames, calculations, green lines. So we're going to go into more lines and settings, how you come into visionary cortex of yourself and set travel. Okay. Now, as you communicate with each other, we already done this already. And that's up to the line of calculations to its systems. Right? So you start with that, right? So this is how you start looking at each other once you identify each other. You start looking at each other from toe to toe. All right? and set position lines of settings on this set position from toe to toe. Sets lines of travel, crosses line setting locations of toe to toe. That's just communication, just to the grounds. So you see that position, see the triangulation? There's the triangulation, there's the grounds. Okay, so you set up the grounds as you communicate with each other, right? Now you can start off from the head to toe to foot, doesn't matter. But then you go from the center operation, so you got your right hand, and you cross over to the other side of the other hand in set position. And you do the same thing in set lines of travel, directing back in lines of signal and location setting. And then you go to the top of the head and set position lines, and then you go around the system, and that position lines apply in 4 settings of travel. In that communication setting, in that convergence system, you go through the other sideline conditions setting to the hand, and the other sideline conditions of its hand and its travel communications. There's the platform in 4 settings. Okay, there's the platform in 4 settings, just through communication. So you see the grounds, the powers, and the atmospheres right away. Boom. And you haven't even set up your box frame. There's your box frame in set travel. Okay, in communications. Conversing with each other in set position. Okay? Now once you get that, then you see yourself in your crop circles. Crop circles are there. And you get your power generators and line conditioning archetypes, set lines of communications. And then you communicate with each other in set position. All right? And that set lines communication setting. You already have the security panels on. I'm just showing exactly if you don't, this is what you have to have. All right? And you do the same thing in set position, it's operation. Secure new panels, process of force friction time frame. All right, so you're good at that level. Okay, so the communication is pretty good, but you want to put another force field on, so you put your plasma suit on. Set lines of travel. Okay, and they see what you're doing, so you do the same thing. Have a communication in an ongoing conversation system, all right? So you can add volume and mass to that position, but let's just start with that track location, all right? All right, and you can talk either invisible. It's up to you, whatever you want to do. You're now invisible. But you're talking to each other, right? Which nobody else can see you. You just see yourselves talking to each other. Tango, tango, foxtrot. It's that position, right? So you're coordinating everything in the now that operates the facilitates the system off the calculation setting screen lines, adaptation to its flux. Setting process, communication lines, ground settings, the sequence, process over here, process over here. And you take your feet and you cross your angles and set lines of travel. Okay, in that positions, then you basically come into the position of its platform. It's that travel communications, how you want to see that through conversion. Okay, so it's pretty interesting how they're talking on top of a building. In that position, change the platforms to set location structure and direct line communication setting, cross angles, line condition system, and travel. Indicates cross line centers and line condition system, all through convergent system, all through travel. And direct lines of link and direct lines of panel communication. So there's always ways of looking at that. And then you split lines of anomalies as space itself and time lines of sequence, process indications of the panels. And you have the ceiling, right? The ceiling is above the system, location of the system, all through calculations. Directing the ground centers, highlights the sequence, process the panels in position to its travel. Okay, grounds, powers, atmospheres. Okay? So there's so many ways of looking at that position. So it's very powerful how you come in that settings. Okay, so there's one set position to travel, how you see each other talking to each other through cloak and dagger. In a simulator that you are. It's like looking at yourself in a room. If you only see a 3-dimensional room, you're both seeing a 3-dimensional room. That means you're at the same frequency, but you're in different space, different time, and that's a lot of confusion to the body that doesn't understand the conceptual setting, why it's there in the first place. Is identify who you aren't. Is always identify you're always seeing yourself and everywhere you are of your own simulator and everybody else in their own simulator through Tango Tango Foxtrot. So let's do this again in travel. And set position. Now it's much easier to see it on a profile. We can do a head-on line sequence, but it's much easier to see yourself in the visionary cortex locations, all right? Okay, so let's just bring this in, okay? All right, so you start off position locations. As you're looking at each other, you don't look at each other straight on. That's a flat surface, okay? So you start up the head port right here, data port line. Process here, watch my indications go to the foot, and watch my indications go to the other foot. because it needs its grounds, right? Now it's grounding, its feet. Okay, there's the platform. Then you have the crop circle coming in position. All right, so that's how you communicate in set position, but you never communicate in lines of center. Okay, it's always in position locations, and then the position here on the other side of the hand and travel. That's the connections, right? So always look beyond, right? Always look above, always look below, but never look at the center, okay? And then you can expand your pie in so many different levels and do the same thing in travel. Does the same thing to you, does the same thing to you, does the same thing to you through platform, right? So that's the look, and then you automatically come into your connections in your systems, which is all paneled operation line connections in travel, right? That puts everything in locations in your setting. So once you have that, then you can basically set up the simulator and how you want to set up the grounds. And that lines up communications to its communication system. You can do it with this interactions and its directions and cross it on this setting, its locations. All right. So, and then you have the split lines of space and time that converts the systems all through travel. Okay, and then you have the panels of operation to systems all through calculations. Right? So there's so many ways to see yourself through communications of Tango, Tango, Foxtrot. There's so many ways to create platforms, but you're creating the platform, you're creating the balance, you're creating the panels, and you're creating the ceiling and set travel. Okay? Pretty simple to understand these things, guys. So once you get into that, it's much understandable how you see that in that positions, how you guys have ongoing conversations with yourself in the simulator that you are through simulations that you create up. Okay? Now you have to understand body frequency lines of grounds, the high lines of signal location system that amplifies the system lines of travel as the direct lines of setting. Okay, so let's get into solar generation lines of 1, process lines of data film strip. Okay, going around the system lines of setting. The visionary cortex is automatically in the mind line in sequence. Okay, that's all the files, right? And you're here in set position. You're there in setting, right? So as you're going through set line communication setting, calculate the grounds, powers, set lines of travel, sets communication system of travel communications. Then you got to modify to your grounds. You can have anything at grounds lines of sequence in that position location system. You can do it from this and set lines back. Right? So there's so many ways you can see yourself in platform. But you have to have a grid because you're creating a road graph screen and direct lines of grounds as communication setting as service and travel communications. So it indicates lines of grounds, powers, atmospheres, and highways. And process indication lines and settings. Okay, so then you have a platform here, and you have a platform here. And set travel communication. Okay, so as the files are coming to you, your body's going through that frame. Okay, so this frame, 3 frames, 4 frames, 6, 8, 12, 24, 36, 48, 72, 144 files of communication. It's all coming to you through tractions, all right? So that's 144 files on ground lines of Earth, windows, frames, and line course centers, 7-day line signals, location system, and travel. Puts line conditions at 1,444,000 files in frame. Set communication setting and convergent system. Hours and lines of seconds, minutes, and hours in frame. And set travel. Okay? Sets communication high centers and location setting to its galaxy alignment. And set travel. Platforms over lines, directing lines, and crop circles. Set course centers of travel communication set of convergent system and travel. Directing ground centers of clocking line centers, pi generation lines of 3 centers of travel, directing lines of 4 set communication system, all through convergence and set calculations. Right? So as you see yourself walking now on the platform. Okay, so the body's walking through the platforms now. In its film strip. Right? In set position. All at once. Right? So the constant avatar in that position to where you are, the oversoul line screen adaptation, where you are in frequency doesn't matter. Because they're always in the now. That's what you got to get in positions of. It's not just you processing yourself, it's you understanding yourself where your body is always in the now. That means the convergent system of your higher self, your avatar, your sim, or whatever frequency you're in, position, location, system, and how to use that in a coordinate, calculated meta-human that you are, internal beings that you are, or anything you see in light, or anything you see in dark, is always in process of the now. Okay? So all those costumes are always in the now. Your story frames are always in the now. You're not in the now because you're not waking up to yourself until you identify yourself already existing in the now. And that's how you process everything of the body. As the body goes to the hours, in that position of seconds, minutes, and frame. Set lines, a position of file line, directing lines of grounds, online sequence, online panel, online frames, high course sense, readjusting, reformation system, all through calculations, all through tractions, all through direction. Okay? So there's a lot of activity going on in position location of your time reactor. Clocking screens, direct signal location system, all through travel. Okay, and it's that position. Setting correlation setting and screen adaptation system, all through flux, and set communications. Setting grounds that calculate and modify line screen adaptation, string theory, and set travel communications and direction. So there's always ways of looking at in that positions, guys. Okay? So I'm just trying to get you guys to understand in that positions how you talk to each other. You start to see each other through simulators that you create. And if you're just seeing a room line, if you're just seeing a door line in that position locations, you're still in the 3 dimension. So as you get in constellation setting, as you see of the information system, travel is communication. Start with that setting. So check this out, okay? The door is here, right? Okay? So the corner of the door, right, is already linked to you, to your foot. The doorknob is connected to the top of your head. Everything's line connecting. It's so powerful stuff. And the position of its shoulder, the other foot on the other side set position, right? The corner on the set position on this side is connected to your foot on the other side set position. And the position lines of high centers and travel in that communication. Once you understand that, then you connect to the 4 corners of the door and set communications. All in setting, all in straight communication. That's all through a door. So you line connected everything, and then you create the positions, the set position. The door itself becomes its own wall. It becomes its own panel. It becomes its own structure, its own design of its grounds, powers, and atmosphere. Okay, so that's how you see everything in set position of you communicating in the simulator of the simulation that you set up and travel. Okay? See, there's so many ways to see an information setting at grounds, an online sequence, location, and set line calculations. But it's just to understand all that through connections of a door, right? How you have to line signal everything. All right, let's just start with the basics. Sitting in a chair. Okay, processing that. Sitting in a chair, right? So you got position locations and that line centers and the positions here. Over sequence, over panel communication system and travel. Let's get in line directions and settings. Automation lines of grounds. Okay. Okay, so that's you sitting in a chair. Now in that position locations, okay, just the chair itself. Okay, this is the corner of the structure, okay, of the tablet. To the corner, right? See, I'm sitting in a chair. So what you're seeing is me, right? Because I'm not adding anything, because it's just the chair itself and the table. So the bottom of the chair goes here, okay? And the other set here goes there, okay? There's the box. It's really interesting how you're all connected. And your arm or your hand goes there, right? And your leg goes there, right? And your foot goes up here. Okay, so everything line connects how you want it set position. Your knee goes down here. Okay, and the positions and settings for you to be in position of the grounds, the actual connections of the chair that you're on, okay, has to be grounded. It has to be sitting on a platform of communication. Okay, so now you're ready to go. And the top of the chair on this corner, right? And the top of your head on that setting, in that position. All right? Okay, so we connect everything. Okay, we got the shoulder. And then we got the other arm. Every joint has to be connected to everything in set positions. All lines, all different directions in that calculations. Okay, there it is. It's all connected. Okay, just sitting in a chair. Very powerful stuff, right? So you see the walkway, right? That's the grounds itself. Then you see the platform in set position. Okay? And then you see the panels at set position. Okay? It's pretty amazing stuff. And then you see the ceiling in set position. It's set travel. Okay? So it's amazing how you see yourself sitting on a chair in a simulation of the sim. So there's so many ways of looking at that. And then that position locations. Then you can add a door, right? Line signal here, down across over here, there's a door. There's a door right there, right? But you need a platform for a door, like that, okay? And that positions and that settings, process that communication setting. Light signals come in attractions and location to a system to the walkway. And that positions and somebody is here, and that positions opening the door. That's that travel. Okay, coming out of the door itself. It's that position, right? Remember, you brought that in. You brought that in. It's that position. Okay? So it just gives to show you exactly how you come into that, and that comes in that positions. You get your grounds for yourself. Okay? You're always on a crop circle wherever you are in set positions. And you connect this way. Okay? And you connect with the feet again, set position. And it does the same. Setting position of the foot, setting position of the other foot, setting positions of the other hand, setting positions of the other hand, setting positions of the chair on the other side, and that travel. Okay? So it's really interesting how you see all this. That's all connected. But the basic grounds is how to set it up in the simulator through communications. But that's how you see each other through communication. Right? Right in the grounds, the powers, and the atmospheres. Okay? So that's how you set things up. Okay, and it's very powerful how you can add equations to that, or that position lines the settings, or you can have somebody come in this position, all right, coming towards you now, and you got to do the same thing again, but now you're in a triangulation. You have an ongoing conversation triangulation flux, which is a trifactor. Somebody coming in, right? Somebody's coming there, right? Do the same thing again, set here, there's a triangulation. Right? So now you communicate with each other all at once through conversation. And now, a tango, tango, foxtrot. Okay? So you got your grounds. And again, you got to do the same with the feet. Same with the feet. Same with the hands. Same with locations. Same with attractions. Same set positions. Operation lines of sequence. All through ongoing conversation. So it gets very complicated as you see yourself more information lines of frequencies and how to identify these things, locations, how you get in the position to its vision. I know exactly how to get into communicate with yourselves in that settings. Okay? Very powerful stuff. All right? And you can see it in all different angles too. It's amazing. Change the structure, change the design, change the schematics, change the perimeter, change the positions, its operation. So there's so many ways to see it through wires of indications, all through travel. Open signals, open panel. You don't just stop there, you go in that formation setting and travel communications and directions. And you see yourself observing everything you're already seeing. Right? Totally different story. Or you put it back to the story you're in. You can bring yourself back into the story, but you understand it's at a different frequency now. It's never the same frequency. All right? So its position is this, changing the story. Okay? Just changing the story itself. It's that position. Okay? You already see it changing. Right? You already see it changing the grounds. You already see it changing the platforms. You already see it changing its communication. Right? Changing the position of its walls in sequence and set lines of communication all through settings. Right? All through triangulation and set position, just locations. Right? Creating new platforms, creating new structures, creating new divisions, creating new locations, all through framing. Okay? It's very powerful when you come into that set location, suit systems, all through travel. Look at that. Something different. Right? And you're here in the simulation game. And you're right there. Totally different operation, but you understand the grounds and the powers and the atmosphere is still there, right? Just it's more complicated now as you see the structure that you created through creating. But you're there, but you have somebody there. And again, you're talking to each other. It's that position lines of travel. Okay? And look at this in set position, it's platform and online communications and travel. Okay? So always see that on a 4-line flux. But just getting the basic grounds, how you come into that position locations all through travel, all through a door, right? Or all through a lamp, or even outside. Okay, so we just have, let's just have you here in the center. You don't bring anything in until you bring it in, right? Nothing's there, it's just empty space. Empty, 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 empty all at once. It's all empty, right? So empty equals nothing, empty equals nothing, 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 nothing. Nothing there, right? Now when you bring it in, then you start to see it. And how you see it is how you see it in vision, right? So that's position here. That's what your positions are creating, right? So that automatically comes to you at set travel. Okay, when that comes in position, it comes in informations of this. This is where it comes into your reality in real time. Okay, it's very complicated stuff. But again, you have to set up the grounds and how you want to set up the walkway surface and how you want to set up the travel and direct lines of grounds of communication. Right? And then you basically set up location grid, set lines of travel, and that position and that travel communication system, all with convergence. And then you set up the position lines of its panels from corner to corner and set travel, right? Sets this way, sets this way, sets this way, and it sets that way in that position, right? So as it's coming in 3 angles in flux, 4 lines of travels in direct line, inside line condition setting, in communication with its convergence system. All through calculations, all through directions, all through locations. Look at this in travel communication. Okay? So, different structures, different designs. Okay? Windows in set position, or mirrors in set position, or doors in recognition, right? But everything that you see is grounds, powers, and atmospheres of the ceiling. You're there in that position of travel. Okay, so once you get the vision come in, abundance, manifestations, or line condition setting, converge long case lines, high travel, it comes to you, past, present, future all at once. You get a direct line panel, processes body, formation lines of grounds, correlates the system, Z line core centers, pi generates its settings, position of the body, follows through. Next. This is the body following through next, in frame, in seconds, minutes, and hour, in set travel communications. Okay? So it gets more complicated, but you get a true understanding how the connections of your oversoul, your avatar, where you are in frequency, because they're all there. They're all there. Because you already created it through creating, which is more powerful than you can imagine. And for you guys to identify that is to see the actual you waking up to you and everything that you get in position of creating the alteration of its egos and bringing those costumes in position and that settings to all levels of self-telling the operation of readjusting you and how you see yourself, how you see your reality, how you see your frequency, how you want to see this, how you want to see that, how you want to become this, how you want to become that, in that position location to travel. But that's what goes on with your position with your oversoul, is your body's constantly going through the hours, seconds, and minutes in frame. Every single time. Okay, and that's how you receive the visions. that come to you all through tractions, all through locations, all at once, in that position. Okay, so that's it. Not just going through portals and stargates, but going through every line calculations all at once in set positions. Going through that travels in direct line of the settings. But in that positions, you have to truly how to get in the settings, how to communicate with each other in the simulator. Okay? And that's how you see everything. And you're seeing in mass, you're seeing beyond everything of scale, everything of dimension. You're seeing dimensional layers, cross lines of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 platforms, right? So turn this into a simulator. Well, you understand this is the panels, the set position, right? It's pretty simple. You understand this is the ceiling. That's pretty simple. It doesn't matter how you see it. It's a ceiling right away. Okay? And it's how you see things, right? There's the grounds right away. Cross and setting. Okay? And here you go. In set positions. Now you can do it this way and this way in tractions, in locations. So however you want to see your simulation, it doesn't matter, but it's the ceiling here on top of the ceiling itself, here on top of the board, or you're climbing up the board in set position. And then you climb up here and set travel. Okay? Or you can be walking on the platforms at set positions here in travel communications. Right? But that's what your body's constantly doing in set position. Okay, it's going through the different levels of the game that it's already been through in that position of processing, understanding what's going on as it goes through its platforms of communication through settings, all through its frames and its widget of its vision. Processing indication settings opens all signal location system, all through convergence system, all through travel. Okay, it's very complicated stuff, but it's a lot of fun when you understand online communication settings, convergence system, all through pyramids, all through travel, all through calculations and astral projections, and calculate and modify. All right, very complicated stuff, but a lot of fun. But again, you see it in all different angles. Okay, this is stuff you already know. You just have to understand what's going on with your vision first. Okay, so it's really interesting when you come to that, eh? But I'm just showing you, just sitting in a chair, how everything is lined in sync with your system. Now it just has to identify everything around you. It doesn't need to identify itself because it's creating its own anomaly of its own consciousness of its own self. What you have to modify your system is just use your mind imaginations and not in the body itself. So just get into line signals, how you see everything. Try to get in your imagination, your body isn't there, just the chair. The chair is there, but I'm not there. Now I'm there. Now I'm both there. Now we're both in that position. Now we're in that frequency. I'm in that frequency in a different frequency. Now we're different frequency. Now we're different space. Now we're different time. Now we're in the same time. Now I'm in the same space. So it's a balance that you guys have to come into formation setting and grounds. In that position, so you stand in the center, all through tractions, locations. You know, starting off with stick people. You know, it's very powerful stuff, right? You don't have to be a professional drawer because what you're drawing is coming from your avatar, wherever you are in frequency and set position. Right? So you just have to understand how to coordinate yourself when you're traveling, especially when you're walking. Okay, let's say there is a tree here. Okay, there's a tree, right? So that tree has its path through you. Okay? It crosses over on the other side. That's how it comes in. You just try to understand how they all connect. So your top of the head is the top of the tree. Okay, that connects to, again, you're using your eyes and you connect to the other side of the tree. So it's direct and redirect, and your hand is over on the other side of the tree. Okay, and your foot is on the other side of the tree. All right. So, and then your other hand that's connected right through the other side of the tree. There's direct and redirect connected with the tree. And so it's really interesting stuff when you get in that positions, right? So now you just have to set up the grounds because you have your crop circle. Okay, and you're going to create another platform over here and another platform over here, right? So your vortex over here, and then your vortex over here in set position, all through traction, right? So the tree goes here because that's what you're doing to the tree. Wherever you go, the tree goes because you're connected to each other through wire signatures. So you see the tree at 3 different levels of frequencies in set position. all at once, right? But you're connected to the line centers, 3 row graph screens or 4 graph communication setting all at once in setting. Process indicates the system how you see through travel. Indicates this, and that lines the calculations. So you have to start seeing everything like this now, in structure of design. All through platforms, all in your simulator. Okay? So it's amazing how you vortex 3 times and you see 3 different trees. So the trees following you wherever you go, because you're magnets, same with your sun and your moon. And once you understand the magnetic force, then you understand the platforms that you come in position that you can make bigger. And make them bigger and bigger and bigger, and they all come together in one position with its operation energetic dome. That operates a signal location system all through travel. Or you can set back at communication setting and vortex back in setting, and put yourself back into observation. And this is what you can do. And at the next level, and screen adaptations of its flux. Seeing what you've done through all levels of observation. Set travel. But that's how everything sets up. Just a basic, I'm just giving you basic understandings how you guys look inside and outside of everything. As you don't look at directly at anything anymore. And that's how you start to see yourself, forming yourself, simulating yourself in the simulator. Okay, it's very, very powerful stuff. Okay, so you're like this, in that position. Okay, that's you, right? And you have your positions of your phone. You have your phone, right? So your top of the phone is here and here, it's connecting, right? And in that position, you're looking here, and you're looking here. Okay, you're never looking in the center, then you can look in the center, okay? So, and the position of the phone in that trowel is really interesting stuff. The phone is this big in set position, it's traction, right? And then it comes to you in this position, right? The phone at the top in that position goes down to your foot. In that position, it goes down to the other foot, right? And the top of this corner of the phone goes down to your other foot and travel. It's that position. There's direct and redirect. So, and then your phone sets line signals and the position location on top of your head in this way in travel. Now you get a triangulation, right? There's the pyramid. So it's process of communication, how you communicate with your modems, your Wi-Fi, your satellites, and your towers. But you have direct line link. That process lines the center operation of the system off the travel. Directing ground center's hand goes over to the other side of your phone and set lines of communication. In a direct line signals, process communication setting, then you set up your crop circles, then you set up a crop circle location stated to your phone. That's right, guys, your phone has a crop circle. You all have to have crop circles because it is connected to your Earth in rotation to its cycle. There's your Earth on top of the Earth. There's your phone on top of its Earth in set position, set travel communications. So there's so many ways of looking at line position of the system. You can be on top of the Earth, inside the Earth. You can do anything you want in line position. All right? But your phone has its own Earth, of its own operation, its own constant that travels on location system to its set lines of calculation setting. Process that indicate lines, communicates the system, its convergent system through its polarities of its figure 8 in rotation system of the travel. Okay? All right, so this is the inside line and set position your phone. All right? So your phone comes to you in that position, in that travel. So it's over line settings, lines of sequence on top of your head. This is what it is in lines of convergent system, all through calculations. In directions, all through calculation. Okay? And that's all through your phone. Right? So it's your imagination you use, you know, it's just basically, but you have to understand how to connect with yourselves and how to see everything of the simulation of itself and who you're communicating with. It's very powerful in set position. Okay? So you ground your settings. Now it processes how you see yourself in travel. Okay, so I'm just giving you guys a better understanding how this all works now, especially if you're in positions here in that communication. Okay. Okay, that's you, right? And basically this is your car. Okay, there's your car. Okay, so here's the wheels of the car. Wheels on the bus go round and round. All right, and then basically, so what you have to do is you have to line connect everything, but don't look directly at it, okay, because it's just a flat surface. It's like seeing all different angles all at once. So you start at the top of the head, start with the corner, right? Then you go to the top of the head and you start the other side of the corner, which is at the bottom, okay? And then you connect with the other side, which is that position of its flat surface, which is the position of its tail light at the back. Now you've seen it 3 settings of volume and mass. Then you can bring it to you in set position. Okay, the truck or the car will come to you in set position. There's the volume. And that's how you see volume through its car. So in that positions, and that travels, again, that communication lines are high center locations. That indicates your hand. Everything's all line connected right away. So it doesn't matter how you see it, but you have to understand how to formulate it through a simulation graph of communication to its system. And then you get positions of its grounds. You have your crop circle. That's right, guys. Your truck or your car also has a crop circle. Everybody has to have a crop circle or you can't travel. Because their position locations and settings, and set lines of travel, you have a pyramid below. Okay, there's a pyramid below, right? That's controlling your center of operation. Okay, there's a pyramid below that the Growthians and carrying location setting that control the systems of your controlling system of gravitation. Right, so it's a fluxing center and rotation setting that goes in communication. Okay, constant continuous flow as your grounds goes in that settings, internal and external force all at once, right? So wherever you go, the pyramid goes. Right, so it's magnet to a magnet in some locations. Sometimes it starts at 25,000, 50,000, 150,000. Your convergence system, every time you set up a structure, is at different locations. As it's different locations, your pyramids are moving to different locations. And that's where the Growthians come in. The Growthians modify the system, set up lines, crystallines, coarse centers, and coolants. It sets communication systems so you don't override your systems in line communication setting and that lines of travel. But it's very powerful how you come in that position of systems all through its gravitational setting to its grounds. All right, so it's pretty wild though when you see it, right? Through a pyramid, magnet to a magnet, and how you process your system and your crop circles puts every location of balance. How you see yourself in travel. Now, in that position lines of high centers, in that calculations, you can cross the platforms and go to another platform in a higher sequence, vortex your system on top of set lines. In that travel. And then you come in that position of location to the system. All right? So in that position lines of high centers, and let's say in that coarse centers line communication system, you want to be connected still, your higher frequency lines of grounds, you still can connect to the calculation setting, but the crop circle has to connect to the truck now in a triangulation flux. Everything has to be line connects, from the head down to the set positions, the other side line conditions, and 3 grounds of surface and travel. So everything has to be line connected, right? Everywhere you go in frequencies. Every time you change your frequencies, you're line connecting and you're going with the process of communication in their directions. So that puts every location to an energetic dome and set lines of travel. Okay? So it's very powerful you come in that position. How you see things. Set travel. Okay? So I'm just showing you how it comes in position, how you see things through your truck or your car in volume and mass. See? Look how many layers of dimensions of space and time that the truck you see through volume and mass. It's like seeing 16,000 doors in set position through volume, right? That's how you see through volume. An online sequence line of communications all at once. Okay? Very powerful stuff. But it gets complicated when you get a true understanding of how to set it yourself in the simulator. Right? So, the basic understanding is understanding your A, B's, and C's. Now, understanding how to create a structure is through an alphabetical system. Let's get into box frame 1 and set position of A, B, okay, B, E. Now, B, E equals lines of E equals lines of D, equals lines of A, right? Whatever it means to you is a configuration setting. As long as you understand what it is, the codification system, you can't make any mistakes. You only make mistakes if you're not modifying your system, if you're bringing in egos, their motion lines, and settings. Remember, this is already done through its equation. So A travels through set position atmosphere lines, outer space. That's outer space, right? Outer space lines, high position of 3 zeros. Track lines in position of 4 centers of measure. Set triangulation, and triangulation is set travel. All right, set calculate, modify, directing line, course centers, position lines of triangulation, line condition setting, north line setting, lines, ETH, process line, direct line, grounds, and position of platform C. Sets coordinates can be indicates lines of B over lines, X over lines, and position lines with Z line cover centers and flux over line. Capacitor line communication lines of pi generation screen lines of adaptation line connection set in coordinates location longitude latitude. Process indication lines of process line direct signals location system all through travel. Okay. So there's so many ways you can see a formation system and the grid lines of formation lines at grounds. Sets calculation lines, 4 lines of 8 tracks, offline centers, inside rotation of 3 centers of measure and scale of communication. Directing ground centers, high lines of panels, and process calculation lines is structured design lines and structured line communication. Process lines of 1 over setting, 2 planets and 3 sequence. Molecule structure of 3 centers of travel. Solar system comes in rotation lines of surface and rotation line calculation setting. Indication lines, XT1000 flux. Process lines of mothership and process communicate inside of travel, outside signal location setting calculations. Inside outside line condition setting the structure design line. There's your structure, there's your divisions, there's your locations. Okay? So it's more schematic, more design line, position your Skynet. You know how to set a position where the mothership's going to be. The coordinates. Remember, it's all in your imagination. You just have to understand all levels without using your body of communication. So just use your line signals. Like I said, don't think your body's there. Try to see it through cloak and dagger. And the more you see it in cloak and dagger, the all you're seeing is just line signals. And line signals that indicates how you see north, west, south, and east through flux or flush. And the process indicates the system, shows you all structure and design line and what you can do through simulation and set travel. Okay? So you're setting up coordinates in all communication. Okay? All right, so once we get in, there's so many ways to create a simulator. And I'm showing you letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols so you get a better track locations. Set a position of 46 line frame equals lines into 60 minutes in frame locations. I can set anything in volume, 14 volume into 8 traction. Okay, there's no indication lines of anything at clocking. So clocking centers, line centers, process line set position over lines, 47 line measure, sets travels into 20 over sequence, stop alarm. Travel point lines of setting, 12 over lines centers, 20 over line sequence, 3 lines of ground, 6 lines of measure, scale communication lines, 8 lines of signals, triangulation lines of 1, process lines of 1, indication lines of 0, 1, process lines, inline conditions of flux. Travel point lines of graph, line condition lines, 3 triangulation line condition setting, box frame, window frames, lines on 8 track, 8 equals lines of B equals lines of C. Set position of question over mark, 8 lines of levels, 3 weather line panels, process lines of Y indicators, and travel communication setting, equal lines of triangulations over lines, and Y lines of flux in location. Sets lines of measure and scale, schematics over screen. Okay, and directions and ground centers of surface and travel, all through modification set travel communications. All right, so we indicate the settings, we indicate ground centers, and we break it down in set lines of sequence. This is where it comes into a binary and rotation lines of graphs and set travel. Online signals, online circuits, and communication. Okay, and then you set line course centers as highways and 4 lines of flush, and 3 centers of measure and 4 lines of scale. Okay, now you see the road, right? And then when you get in that position, so you can add yourself on equation. So you start to see the metric meters, the scales, and you see the matrix and location system. Okay, so you're on the game now, but you're seeing the walls of letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols all through travel. So once you see the wall sequence, it gets more complicated now because you're seeing the higher levels of grounds as sequence now and set positions, higher lines of channel. There's a platform here, A, C over set lines of D over track locations and settings. Process indicates lines of platforms, online centered line communications in configuring system, all through perimeters and rotation system and travel. Directing ground centers, high lines of sequence, flux over lines, 4 lines of sequence, line conditions of 4 lines of flux, 4 lines of measure, 4 lines of scale, 2 lines of zeros, rotation lines of calculations, green locations, all through tractions. Look at that in all line positions. Traveling through all that. It's unbelievable. Now you change the scales to communication, but you got to change the modulation center into space modulation. Process indicates lines. You look really close, you can see the teleportation vessel inside. Sets course centers, directing ground centers of flush over line screen adaptation and teleportation. Set operates lines of sequence and platitude location system, all through platforms of communication and settings. Okay. Inside rotation and travel communication. Okay. Part acceleration lines, torical fields in both side rotations and travel. Direct lines of online centers, online sequence, and platform communication setting of Tango. Directing ground centers, high line sequence, in location system at channel operation screen locations. Operation line settings, high graph line communication in convergence system, all through travel. Very complicated stuff. But you get a true understanding of how this all works and set position to its operations, all through calculation. Okay, so your graphing screens, your schematics, your formulas get a lot more complicated when you get inventory. Building up the inventory, building up the infrastructure, building up the contrast, building up the construct, building this, building that, building, adding. You add a triangulation here, add a 4-line graph like this, just in a 3 angle. Another 3 angle, right? And then you spread out. There's the ceiling. There's the panels. There's the grounds. Okay, it's simple, easy done, right? This is lines of an open line window, an online sequence. Okay, platform over line, cross line angles, and 3 lines of flux over triangulation. Different structures of design lines. Setting process of communication setting at different angles and travel communication inside travel communications. Directing ground centers, turning it around in line with the sequence location setting to pyramid of travel communication. Directing ground centers, high lines of sequence of platforms over line centers, high sig location setting, and convergence system through astro travels. Sets platforms over lines that indications cross lines, 3 angles and process calculation of 3 centers of measure and scale. Sets this cross location line connection setting, line signature location system, all through travel. So everything's connected position of its structure of its building. So the structure of a building, triangulation line conditions, now you have a platform in set position here. Set position instructions. Okay? So it's pretty simple how you set this thing up. It's pretty amazing stuff how you see the stargates and star measure and sky gates. Sets communication height, communications convergence, and line center location system, all through trashing. Okay? Setting on online centers, line condition setting the structure line. Sets lines at high positions, all levels. High position lines that communication system, all through travel. All through connection system calculation. Okay? And you're inside looking around at what's going on. Okay? So there's so many ways to set this up. You just have to understand how to line connect everything, and your body, it's just the setting location that the mind projects everything. So it's knowing how to look at things as you're modifying your systems all through travel. Okay, so there, and let's say that let's say you're there and you're looking at a chair. Okay, you're looking at the chair. No, the chair's looking at you right away. It's looking at you or where you are right away in set position. It doesn't identify you because it already sees you in platform of communications. That's how a chair sees you right away. Okay? Now, how you see the chair the same way. But you have the line connect everything information sending to grounds to communicate. Right? As with the chair, and once the chair identifies you, it comes out of its position to its location of travel. Okay, it's very complicated. So now you see the chair in this level. 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 Now once you see that, you see people sitting in the chair. Which is next? Okay, I showed you guys this already, but waiting for the bus or wait for the subway. Okay, so now the chairs communicate with me, but I'm communicating with everybody all here, and the chair is sitting down, position location of system. So the chair brought all these chairs in with communication with me and conversion system, communicate with the chair and everybody else. Very powerful stuff in set position, all through a chair. Oh yeah. Isn't that wild how you see that? So in that position, they're all connecting with me now. All at once. See, they're all connected with me, and they're all connected set position lines of travel. But that's what the chair brought in by itself. So I'm just showing you how consciousness become consciously aware of what you're doing in set position lines of travel and direct lines of link, the platforms of communication setting, all different angles in travel communications with system of the calculation. Okay? Very powerful stuff, isn't it? Never expect to see that. So there's so many different ways to create a simulation. There's so many ways to create a simulator that you are. But never look directly at things. Look beyond things. Like always add line signals in that position. And then you understand how to set that up. Then you see it through a box frame. And then you see it through a panel operation frame. Okay? And then you have signature lines. There's a billboard. There's a sign right there. Set position. Right? So, what is that now? A tapestry of a wall, which is a frame. So as you bring that in, you bring in more stories, but it doesn't stop there. Everything has to line connect. And you guys already know this already because it comes in a volume and mass. So now you understand that positions and all the attractions and all that direct location system, all that communicates to its convergent system, is all positioned to its platforms of communication sending to its grounds, to its set calculations. All right? And then you can expand that, set travel. See, I'm expanding the floor now. So I'm expanding the floor and bringing myself in now. Hey, what's going on? How's everybody doing? Just thought I'd tap in, see what's going on, right? And now I'm sitting down in the chair, right? Talking to everybody else. Booyah. See? Talking to everybody else. See, that's the structure of a simulator. So there's so many ways. I did it through the chair, and the chair did it through information setting. How it's so powerful how we see this all through vision coming to our settings. But there's so many ways to set up a simulator, guys. All through attractions, all through locations. At all different angles, right? It's powerful stuff when you start recognizing how to create it through creations of creating. So, but it's pretty amazing, eh? From a chair, how it created that. The chair created all this so they could sit down. And what are they sitting for in set position? Its operation lines and settings in that communication system, all through travel, is a direct line in that line rotation surface that processes position location to its attractions, all through locations. Okay? All through setting, all through operation. Very powerful stuff, guys. Okay? And you see it on different angles. It's that communication. Okay? So everything has to have a ground, everything has to have a platform, everything has to have a balance of all communication and setting. How you create it through a simulator to systems all through travel. Okay? So I'm just showing you guys what you guys already know, how to do this and how to do that, how to see everything information setting. Okay? Simplifies everything information lines and grounds. So the more you understand that, that's how you start to see the vision. Okay, how you connect with each other. Now I can just connect with the digital pad, just here in the center. You have to have a center because you are the center of operation. But it's how you connect things is already set up. That's another thing you have to understand. So the four corners are already set up in the digital pad. There's the panels. Okay, so you're looking at 4 pyramids. I said that before, right? 4 pyramids right away. It's that platform. Okay, it's how you see the pyramids of you in 4 settings at 4 different angles all at once, right? And then you see yourself here, and then you see yourself expanding in set position to its location system all through travel. Okay? Through face recognition. Everything line connects. Every nose, every process, every communication. Everything has to line connect, guys. Everything has to line connect. There's the nose, right? And positions of the mouth. Okay? And you have a platform, and you have another platform. So you got 3 platforms now. But you line connect everything all at once. Okay? And you can even change it too. Set position, right? And then you can do this and set positions. Okay, adding grid screens or crossing angles and flux over lines and direct lines of lane can process this location system, going this way in instructions, going this way in instructions, going through waving screens adaptation setting, going through this line rotation system off the travel. Okay, there's so many ways of looking at inside line communication. Okay, it's pretty amazing stuff, but everything has to have a platform of travel. Okay, but this indicates everything in travel communications. Starting that up. Schematics over mapping, mappings over lines, mapping over square roots, mapping over triangulation, mapping row line condition setting through flux and set travel. Okay, and you see the face. All right, and here's the neck, and here's the body. It's all computer operation and settings, but you see it in light, shades, and shadows in set position. Okay, there's its intelligence. All right, we're going to get there in line, position, lines of travel, understand how to communicate the opposition location and system of the calculations. But this is how you modify everything line condition setting. The more you focus on that, the more you understand how to set up yourself in the simulator that you are through vision of cortex and location with settings. See you in 5.